Hi, good evening, everyone. I am McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas, and I have been waiting for this event. It feels like forever now. I'm so excited to be hosting two of my all-time favorite authors, read everything they've written, and I cannot wait for this conversation. We're here tonight to celebrate the publication of Megan Abbott's brand new book, The Turnout, which we have signed copies of. I've just dropped a link in the comments if you'd like to order signed copies. It's also just been announced today, big news, that it is the Read with Jenna Today Show Book Club pick. So congrats to Megan for that. If you want a signed copy to go along with your Today Show reading, you know where to find them. Tomorrow night, we're going to be joined by Karen Rose and Jane Ann Krentz. And then I think a lot of you are probably Laura Lippman fans out there as well. She'll be here on Thursday with Mark Billingham. And then we have a special treat for you guys on Thursday night. It's our Penguin Random House Rep Night, where they talk about all their favorite picks for the fall, recommendations. So they get to tell us about the things that are exciting and upcoming from Penguin Random House. So that's kind of a special event, one we only do maybe once a year. So if you're looking for book recommendations, it'll be a wealth of knowledge. But everyone's here watching for Megan Abbott and Gillian Flynn tonight. So let's bring on the stars. Let's start with Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. I'm so sad you're not here in person, but needs must. Congratulations on another fantastic book.
Thank you so much. All our sort of childhood ballerinas are coming out.
Exactly. I'll do your official introduction, although I'm pretty sure most people know who you are if they're watching. So Megan Abbott is the award-winning author of 10 novels, including Give Me Your Hand, You Will Know Me, The Fever, Dare Me, and The End of Everything. She received her PhD in literature from New York University. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times Magazine, The Guardian, and The Believer. She's the co-creator and executive producer of USA's adaptation of Dare Me and was a staff writer on HBO's David Simon show, The Deuce. And Abbott lives in New York City. Once again, congratulations on the Jenna's Book Club pick, on another new fantastic book. And I cannot wait to bring on Gillian and get this conversation started. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I get to be here for Megan's opening night of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, another author who needs no introduction, but Gillian Flynn is the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Gone Girl, for which she wrote the Golden Globe nominated screenplay, and the New York Times bestsellers, Dark Places and Sharp Objects. A former critic for Entertainment Weekly, she wrote and executive produced Amazon's forthcoming series, now it's been out, Utopia. She lives in Chicago with her husband and 2 children. Now is the time when I get to go away, sit back, relax. If you guys need anything, call me on here. And for those of you watching, thanks for being here. There's no such thing as a dumb question. You can put them in the live chat on YouTube or on Facebook, just in the comments, and we'll get to them later on. All right, you guys have fun.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I feel so lucky, and I feel like I'm abusing you by making me. I so wanted to catch up, but I am sort of making you do this. So I was like,
yeah, I know. We were all just talking before we got on that it's been going on 3 years since we last got together here in Chicago. And you were you on a book tour then too?
Right before that, I was interviewing you for Vanity Fair.
Yeah. So naturally, we needed to go for drinks, but and then life happened and pandemics happened. But I'm just glad to see you here so that we can talk about all our. We'll definitely need to talk about your book, which is brilliant, which I loved, and then all our other weird things that we enjoy talking about. That we all the true crime books we were talking about before when we were waiting to go on. But I just had to say, I really don't know. I'm just amazed how you do it. I'm amazed how you build this tension. You make a statement. You're really smart and you're compulsively readable. And this is such a beautiful book. The second I saw it was about ballet, I was just like, as the 2 sister teachers sister teachers who are, run the ballet school. Every little girl wants to be a ballerina, and there is you always find ways to tap into the psyche, and particularly female psyche, and I just so appreciate that. And I also hate you that you're on your 10th book, so that you have now lapped me 3 times over, which is starting to get embarrassing. But
you've been a little busy too.
I got lured into Hollywood, but I'm back, baby. I'm actually right in the middle of writing a book of my first, like, wrangling that first draft wrangling stage, which is always my hardest part. But I was reading your book, and I've also read such great books by women this year, like the other wife, Good Neighbors, Animal, and now yours. I've been on such a streak about women who are just, the true. That was my dear husband actually bringing me the book so I can hold it up properly. I lived in the other room. About really just opening up the female psyche in an absolutely fearless way that I just so appreciate. It doesn't feel like a magic trick. It does feel like magic. So congratulations. It's just stunning. It's just stunning. And the way I wanted the book, and then I promise everyone I'm going to let Megan talk at some point. But first I have to gush about this book, because what you always do, the thing, like, if I had to pick a thing that I love, like, about your stuff, is that about your writing, is you can nail a character for me in a paragraph. Like, in a paragraph, you write something, I'm like, okay, I want to learn more, but, like, I am situated in this character and I know who this character is. And it's always just like, so the story is about 2 sisters who are very close. They run a ballet school, and they have a third named Charlie, who's married to one of the sisters, kind of a more dominant sister and a more passive, looser sister. I'll let you describe it better. But then this guy comes into the situation, a contractor. And I love this, like, it says, it's just so perfect. He's wearing an ill-fitting blazer with chalk marks on both sleeves, belt pulled too tight, giving him the overall look of a former high school athlete gone to seed. On his feet were a pair of natty Chelsea boots caked with mud that he tracked through the studio like a deer hunter. And I was like, I got that guy. I don't, it's not like I know tons of contractors, but, like, I know that guy or girl who tracks through all that sort of stuff. Like, I have that. And there's a quick thing about their mom, their beloved, their mother, who is so elegant and originally ran the ballet studio. And it says, their mother, the swan neck, those elegant arms, her dark hair gathered up tightly with her grandmother's dragonfly combs, so dignified, so refined, carrying so much inside all the time, surrounded all day by mirrors and never letting anyone see. Just like, I mean, you just nail these people. So I want to talk to you about it, but maybe we could start out. I never want to over-explain someone else's book, because I only want you to give as much as you want to give. So maybe you could go since it just came out and people haven't read it yet, and just kind of give the lines.
Yes, I loved what you said about I mean, the way you described it sounded like also the beginning of a great porno movie. It's like these teachers, and one of the more dominant ones. Like, great.
We can look into that. I don't know. That's so wrong.
Turnout takes on a whole new meaning. But I mean, for me, it was so much about one of these really insular family structures that never let anyone else in, and what happens when, in this case, because of ballet, it's so orderly, it's so structured, it's so contained, their universe, Dara and Marie, and they've grown up in it. They've never known anything else, and what happens when this sort of force of chaos, which is this contractor, Derek, who's the opposite of that in every way. What happened when those two forces would come together. But the weirdest thing is that the inspiration was sort of a true crime based, and that it's not based on a true crime. But do you remember that podcast that became the TV show Dirty John?
Yes.
So, do you remember that was like quite a big deal when it came out, the podcast, and that was about this sort of serial con man in that case who would romance these women and then steal from them.
He done himself as someone he was not at all. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and had all these false identities. It was a sort of fascinating case, but I was so interested in the comments, which one should never read, but the comments on the podcast, and it was all these comments of very angry women, and they were very angry not at Dirty John, who by the way was a murderer, but at the women who had fallen for him, and they were so angry. How could you be so stupid? All the red flags were there, and it was really it was an odd thing. And of course, the people who comment are always sort of a little self-selective. They're feeling very strongly about something. But I was sort of wondered where that came from. And so with the case of these two sisters, I wanted one of them to be, which is Dara, to be very judgmental of her sister's choices, and how that can really, like, where is that coming from? And I wanted to explore, where that might derive. So that was the odd sort of derivation of that. And then I thought, well, let's put it in a ballet school. So.
Naturally. I mean, obviously with, we've written incredibly excellent and extraordinarily different books about cheerleading, gymnastics, and now ballet. And so, of course, it leads to the question, it's so interesting to me because these are certainly watching gymnastics this year, and all the conversation about the costumes they wear and why those are different than the men's, and also, with Simone Biles and the idea that, we expect these women and all three of those sports to be extraordinary. I mean, they have to be extraordinarily strong. They're beasts. They're so tough. And yet at the same time, we absolutely desperately want them packaged in like dolls.
Yes.
So I always find that fascinating. I read tons of books about those different sports because it fascinates me. But is that kind of how you came about, or tell me about that?
It really is. It's sort of not I don't come it comes from I guess like you, I'm just drawn to it. I don't know why. And later I figure out, oh, it's because it's this again. But it really,
I read the book again in a different way, which is what we all do. We all have our weird obsessions, for sure.
And it does seem like these like cheerleading, gymnastics, and ballet are all intensely feminized exercises, and they're all different ideas of femininity, but they're all really all based on the notion that you are concealing all the effort, everything you put into it, and it should look like it is, with ballet, it should look completely effortless. It should look like you are lighter than air, that you can move through the air so perfectly. And it's the same thing with Simone Biles. When you actually look, when they break down some of those stunts she does, it defies physics. But but we expect there to be no toll, emotional, psychological, or physical. And it does seem like this kind of canny metaphor for being a woman, because of course we're still supposed to sort of do it all and smile and please everybody and all that stuff. It is honestly quite
have our hair done too on top of it, and and it was interesting, although the idea about Simone Biles and anyone saying hey, like part of the athleticism is you've got to go out there and perform no matter what. Like part of the feat is getting over that mental hurdle. And I was having this conversation. And I was like, okay, but if you're swimming or you're running, you're not in serious chance of dying. That way, like that is these are sports and they are sports. Ballet is a sport and an art, that where you can desperately hurt yourself. So it's not just that we're asking for for the strength and the beauty, but we're also asking for this just mind numbing, and to me, ability to put yourself out there and know that you may get very, very hurt at each turn.
That's right. And it's their very sort of brilliance at it that makes it look so easy, that then makes them be judged, because why can't you do this? Why can't you just keep going back?
Yeah.
And so it sort of becomes this impossible cycle. And I thought it was so courageous of Simone Biles to do that, knowing there still is such a strong sports ethos that you just always keep going. And then sort of Carrie Strugg's story, where now it's known that she didn't need to do that.
Yes.
Had the points anyway, and that's that kind of ethos. It's very intoxicating. It's very American, and let's be honest, we're all over it. Let's just not do that to people anymore.
Let's not do that to people. So I read that, and I read an interview with you talking about the turnout. First of all, I think you needed to tell people exactly what the turnout means, because I did not know this. And I did not know how, again, physically horrifying it was, because you see it and you think, oh, well, I could do that.
Yeah, you see ballet dance.
Flip her up. I'm on it.
They make it look so easy, but and I had heard the term, but I didn't quite know what involved to get it. But it's essentially to make your body from your hips to your toes be 180 degrees. And we're sort of used to seeing that with ballet dancers' feet, but we're not thinking of what's actually enabling that is that they have actually trained their whole and you see how hard it is. And it's really ideal to achieve it at a specific age, because you're not so young that you will permanently damage yourself, but you also have a little bit of that sponginess that like 12, in that area. And it is a very powerful sort of rite of passage for ballet dancers, and it is very connected to femininity and to female sexuality. A lot of ballet dancers talk about the way that they use that in their dance. If there's a character that's supposed to be a kind of femme fatale or any of these things,
okay,
you're opening yourself up literally to the audience, which is hence porno
yourself. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it was sort of haunted by that image and what it took to get it, and there is a kind of, it is sort of, it's not, your body's not supposed to go that way, but yeah, I guess we all.
Yeah. But the sacrifice is made, but the sacrifice is made when you're still a child, which certainly has to do with gymnastics and on the other books that you've written about. I know that I read that you took ballet lessons, at least. I don't know if you achieved what you would call an actual ballerina or not. I'll let you choose. I've never seen you, so I don't know how long you took them for, but there were two sisters at the ballet studio you went to that you were always kind of interested in, like what their inner lives were like, right?
Yes, they were, in that case, twin sisters, which was too good to use. It's one of those things where people like this better and no one.
Then you're in VC Andrews territory, which we do love.
Yeah,
which is not a bad territory to be in, but maybe not what you were trying to go for.
Always 2 steps from there anyway.
Aren't we?
But they were identical twins, and one had bangs and one didn't, and they were so beautiful to my 8-year-old's eyes. And it was 2 years. It was the Casale School of Dance in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, and it was in a strip mall, and it was. It was right next to Farmer Jack's, the grocery store, and it was really it was that I think for a lot of people that attempt ballet, it's sort of your first experience of having all your fantasies and illusions about yourself shattered in very short succession, because my body is never going to do any of these things, not just what the teacher can do, but literally what this girl next to me can do. It's just never going to do that. So I made it, maybe 2 years, but I moved to tap dance after that. That was really better, but
that's much better.
Yeah, it was a sort of idea about, it is that that fantasy that some many girls have, that you're going to be this sort of ethereal vision, and
Mhm.
and your life will unfold as Kathy in Flowers in the Attic does.
So yes, I was going to mention that. It does. It all comes back to Flowers in the Attic. Sometimes you can just boil my stuff down, and there it is. But
It's like it's in there when you don't even know it was in there. It was only when the book was finished
yeah.
when the editor pointed it out. Like, wait a minute, a ballet, a family, a house. Yeah.
A brother-like figure who's more than so. Yes.
Yeah.
Well done. But certainly added so much more to it. Was that? Do you tend to have an initial spark, or do you? I always find whatever I've been writing in my last book often tweaks me into the next book a little bit. Like I'll start kind of thinking on something weird that's like I don't have room for in this book, but I've been thinking enough about it that it's going to kind of flood over, and I'll write this one. But I don't know how you're like.
Yeah, that often does happen. It did not this time. I started something else. I was really sort of, confused, and then I kind of stumbled. For me, and I don't think maybe we've talked about this before. I think it might be the same for you. I finally got a voice, and it was sort of Dara's voice, even though she's not telling it. It's sort of closed third person, and it just sort of, she's very, very sort of stern and tightly
disciplined. She feels like the way I would feel like all ballerinas who are good would actually internally be, not maybe not externally, but would certainly like to have that discipline. Like that to me felt like exactly what you would have to be like.
Yeah.
These are the ways things are, and they're done this way, and don't do anything else because we've been doing this for hundreds of years this way. And
that's right. There's a reason these things exist. And once she sort of started hovering in my head, and you had mentioned reading a lot of books lately by women that you loved, and I've had that experience too. And I do wonder if someone's going to look at the books published by women between the years of, say, 2016 and 2022 or 23, and they will see all these images of sort of angry, powerful, and resilient women, because it does feel like there's been a lot of them, and it's sort of humming through. And Dara's voice had that for me, and that made it feel alive. And then you just, whenever you get that, you just go with it. I'll figure out the story later.
Oh, absolutely. She'll take me there. Like I'll take my hand and show me the way for a little bit. You have to kind of trust it somehow.
Yes. I mean, do you find, is it a voice for you usually?
Usually it is. In my first two books it was, and then when I wrote Gone Girl, I had this, I watched a lot of, as you know, I watched a lot of Dateline and true crime and all that sort of stuff. And so I had twin visions. One was the idea of a man coming home to his house with the door wide open, and like what that moment felt like, and you not knowing exactly for him what it felt like just seeing his actions. And then going on along with the media, because that's my continued through line is there's usually some sort of, since I used to be a journalist, I'm fascinated with how stories and the stories and the storytellers change the line and what you're left with. And so I like the idea of these kind of dueling narrators, but I didn't really know what happened. It took me the longest time to actually, Nick's voice was pretty similar to mine. I kind of just relax into him. Then he, I gave him he had all my backgrounds. Amy, I didn't even know who she was. So she took actually longer.
It is so funny how that works. It's unexpected. Still the voice of the cheerleader in Dare Me was the hardest for me to nail, because it's so the opposite of me, and so it's always sort of surprising when one comes out and sort of takes hold. But then I need to ask you a question now. I'm too excited about this true crime term, because we have not spoken since, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years. true crime is being told in such different ways.
Yes.
All Be Gone in the Dark was like a really maybe one of the galvanizing cases of that, but it is so different from the classic Dateline model, and it's been a fascinating development to see these sort of more survivor or victim forward narrations, and that focus much more de-glamorizing it and bringing the human element. I don't know, have you noticed that too?
I have, and I think it's usually pretty fascinating. I mean, I like it from that point of view rather than necessarily the demon, focusing on the demon. That said, I love stuff that I love like Dr. Death. That was pretty much the demon loose. And then these kind of side guys trying to fix it, but a little bit like, that one certainly from podcast to TV series. I'll watch anything with Christian Slater, so I'm a sucker. But
but it was sort of like
when the next Pride.
It totally goes way back. In that one, to me, it was like it was exciting for me to reach that point. It was almost so upsetting that I almost had, because there's so much in Dr. Death. There's such bodily.
Yes.
It really plays on the vulnerability of being a patient in ways I had never experienced. And I think that the podcasting, I think, has been great for true crime in that way, because you can really narrate it in a way that plays on all these things.
I mean, I feel like podcasting may be maybe the best way to do it. I just think it gives you freedom, and with a good narrator and a good person who's guiding you through it and has really formatted it well, it's pretty amazing. But I wish the Betty Broderick podcast had been longer.
It's long forever with that one.
I mean, add 30 more episodes to that, baby. That's a season. Come on. Give me expand. But yeah, I there's certain, I only got into podcasts. I didn't even know about them until I started doing Utopia, and would listen to them like at 5 a.m. when the church van was driving me to wherever far-flung set we were going to. And it's such a great way to tell stories, and I've gotten, I sometimes, do you ever listen to books on a podcast, or like on your?
Really only started to do that during the pandemic, because I was needing to hear voices constantly to assure myself the world will go on. So in my existential dread, I needed always to have something, and I started to listen to some memoirs, Angelica Houston's memoir, and sort of Hollywood ones, and then the die was cast. I did get really intoxicated by the good voices, and just sort of sinking into something else. We were all seeking escape, and still are to a large extent.
Yeah, I think so. With the Turnout, as you were writing it, I'm always interested. I feel like your writing and my writing is similar in that we love to tiptoe right up to the edge of V.C. Andrews. I don't know, of whatever line you call. I don't know what line you call that, but like just almost that heightened reality, or slightly. It's not, surrealism isn't quite the right word, but in my work, it's too much, I guess is the word. Or the tiptoe up to the edge of being just too much, having people go like, never in a million years, and then tiptoe back a little bit. And I love how so you and I both love to do that, and we just write these kind of, I think, Technicolor type of books. I know that you have your PhD in film noir, basically, from NYC. And so I see some of that, but like your stuff does not feel, it feels less noir. It feels like boom, boom, like, Munchkin land of sexuality and violence.
Yes, it's so funny that you say that, because I just rewatched The Wizard of Oz for the first time in years, and there's this new restoration of it, and the color is so vivid, and I was watching it, and it was like I'd never seen it. Like, this is so great. This is, it feels inside my head at all times, and I'm seeing it here laid bare. I do think of it that way, and heightened is the word. I think, it's sort of how it feels more than how it is. It's sort of how everything.
Yes, that's such a good way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, I bet you have had this too, but it's sort of sometimes you have conversations with Hollywood where you're trying to describe that. Like, this doesn't actually have to be real. It's like, this is,
right.
Because that is why we watch movies and TV, I think, is to sort of match the sort of thud of our hearts in some way and make everything,
I mean, you bring up a really interesting point, though, which is I feel like women tend to write that way more often. Women tend to take that risk and like, this is how it feels. It doesn't matter how it is. This is how it feels. And I feel like that's because we have to explain ourselves constantly in actual reality, no matter what we're doing. Like, it doesn't, like, just listen to me. This is how it feels. Like, this is how, this is what we're doing. This is, whatever it is. It's that sort of like that being forced to overemphasize things in order to get our point across.
I think that's so true. It's just like being a woman is so much of like men telling you to calm down and to relax. And
Don't be chill. Calm down. Yeah.
Don't ever tell a woman to calm down. It's really never going to help. But
right.
it is like,
or that she should not feel that way. Like I have adjudicated your case, and I have chosen that you should not feel this way.
Yes, we were all also raised on Gavin de Becker and the art of listening to your instincts, which is, I always remember, if it feels this way, you should listen to that. And
yes.
It is hard to figure out where that line is sometimes, and usually other people have to tell me. I don't know. How is it for you? Do you have a reader or do you catch yourself, or do you just take your chances?
I put it in if I like it. I mean, if I like it, like some of the stuff, for sure, like in the middle of Gone Girl when Amy's in the Ozarks, and like that was just me totally entertaining myself. Because I happened to be writing in the Ozarks at that time. And so I had a chunk of 30 pages, and it was like, okay, what happens next? She goes and it just, that whole midsection I am fully owning is just weird. But I love it. And it's so weird. But I didn't pull back. By the time she got to Desi's house and was kind of being kidnapped, there was one whole big scene where it's sort of like a King Lear sort of vibe, or the story of Salt. What's the story of testing each princess about what she would give her dad? Or I'm sorry, I'm blanking, but
that is King Lear. It's King Lear.
Okay. All of a sudden it felt wrong, and so yeah, he had a whole big moment with her where he was like, I remembered, I am the one who knew you loved salt. And he takes her to a salt cellar, and he has a million different kinds of salt, and they're eating salt for every dinner. And he's cooking everything. They're having trained salt and stuff. And I was like, okay, now this is just bonkers. It's just bonkers out of there.
Well, listen, who started it all? Shakespeare was too much too. I mean, you really have to take the tongue and the eyes out? Do you really?
Must we? Yeah. They really have to both kill themselves and fall on each other's bodies? Are we sure about that?
6 minutes of the play. That Ozark section, I know I told you before, is one of my favorite sections of fiction ever. So I'm so glad you kept it in. But I do think we have to sort of listen to that stuff. It's also, to me, is sort of the essence of anyone who's read a lot of true crime. There's always these, when you're on the run in some way, when you're under the radar, and that stuff is so vivid and just delicious. And I can't get enough of it. I love it.
Well, someday you and I can go on a road trip to the very place where you can feed catfish right off the dock while you're eating the catfish, and we will write our pants off because it's very inspiring. It's very lock your doors up twice, and because the woods are around and bad things might happen.
It's always when you feel like you're in Dick and Perry land, and you don't know Dick and Perry, you're out there or in here.
Oh my gosh, we took a road trip, our whole family. We drove all through, along Kansas, and I had a moment where I was like, should we loop down to Garden City and do a little Truman Capote? And I was like, my children are 6 and 10, so I don't know that they're ready to listen to In Cold Blood on the radio, but.
Yeah, so don't you want to see the clutter house next to the bar, the large ball of yarn? You can see it the next person.
Don't I show you a good time, kiddos?
Oh my God. But also, since we've last been to each other, we've really had adventures in Hollywood, and you first are both in feature and TV. And like, what? I mean, I know I get asked this a lot, but you must be asked a lot more about the difference between writing for both.
Yeah.
To me, I find it very different. What do you think?
I do find it very different. It's hard. I'm an introvert. I mean, I'm by nature, like, meaning I like people, but I don't get my energy. Like, after I'm around people, I need to be by myself for a little bit. Well, when you're, obviously when you're in Hollywood, and especially if you're running a show like we both have recently, and you're the final answer for everything, like, I'm sure you had that experience, like people are flowing you into the bathroom with questions, and it's just like there's no space to be alone. And then on the weekends we would do night shoots. I'd come home at 5 a.m., wake up 4 hours later, dance around with the kids for the weekend because I'd been a ghost all week, and then start it all over again. So it was it was a thrilling experience to like get it all made. And I mean, I loved all my collaborators. So I don't want to sound like I'm angry or putting it down. Like, I love my collaborators. I loved everyone, bringing it together and seeing it all, what was in my brain, become a space. And that was so cool. And the actors, but for me, it was like a physically exhausting thing. Like, by the end, I was actually like emaciated and not entire, like, just, it really was different. Whereas now that I'm kind of, in my own little space and I don't have to think about anything, I find like there's you're using a different type of creativity. I'm by myself, so I feel recharged as I'm writing, and I can just kind of wrangle with what's on the paper a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I do think most novelists, at least, are introverts, and sort of being, on set for 14, 16 hours a day. And I had a co-showrunner and don't have kids, so I don't know how you did it, because I felt like The Walking Dead so much of the time, and you want to keep this. Everyone's working so hard, and you want to keep it up, but really, what you want to do is put on your big headphones and go in the corner and hide a little bit by craft services, preferably. But,
yes. Yes.
It is. Yeah, it's sort of that personality wise feels like the opposite, and then the writing wise, it's so structured versus novel writing, which in
a way is kind of reassuring as you start writing. It's sort of, there's something nice about blocking things out and knowing act 1, act 2, act 3, this thing is to happen here, that, and like they're, it's sort of like ballet. Like, there are rules there for a reason. You can break them, but you should know you're breaking them, and you should know why.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're messing with a structure that's worked pretty well for a pretty long time. So I kind of appreciate that. I feel like it takes less out of me to write a screenplay than it does, a novel.
Yeah, because you do have it. You've already broken it, and so it's all these blocks laid out, and you have some freedom within. But then I remember it was hard for me, both thrilling and hard for me, when I first went back to a novel, because it was like I could pick anything could happen. I could decide anything. It's kind of terrifying. Why babies need to be swaddled? I can't.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God! I see McKenna says she has some questions.
Great. Let's do it.
I do have questions. We actually had someone email the other day who was really upset that he was going to miss this and not see it live. And so he has submitted a question via email. So we're going to get to his first. So I think his name was Colin. And he was wondering, for both of you, who are 3 lesser known modern authors that you absolutely love and wish would receive more recognition? And anyone who has their ideas first can go first.
What if we each did one, like do it back and forth, so then we can the other one?
All right.
This is the kind of question I'm the worst at, because I'm one of those people, I can watch the Oscars and people will be like, who won? And I'm like, I don't know. I just watched it and my mind is now blank because you asked me that question.
Yes, well, I can start with one while you're thinking.
Yes.
Which would be William Boyle, who's also a friend of mine. But Bill Boyle, he's an amazing crime writer who is published by Pegasus Books, and he is a Brooklyn native, and he writes these sort of rich. I consider them a kind of crime melodrama set. Well, most of his books are set in Brooklyn, and it is more like what we were talking about, Gillian. They are very heightened, but they are sort of set in sort of gritty Brooklyn, and these sort of worlds come to life, and they have this sort of, they remind me of like early 90s indies movies in a certain way. They're just sort of very character rich, and just they're just very voicey, and I just love the idea that there can be space for the crime melodrama, and I think Bill Boyle's books are it. I love them.
Right on. I have now written that down. I'll definitely. Okay, so mine is one of those where people who know her are going to be like, she's been around forever, you're an idiot, and she's a national treasure. But I am disturbed by the number of people where I mention her is pretty much one of my all-time favorite writers. People don't know, which is Joy Williams.
Yes.
Which I just feel like is a bizarro time. Like anyone who knows her worships her and considers her part of the canon, as well as she should be. But there's this weird gap. I can't figure out if it's generational or men not reading enough books by women, which I will say is a problem. Because I just think she's not fully recognized as amazing as she is. And I read The Quick and the Dead, which is about 3 girls in the desert, and a man who's never mind. I'm not even trying to explain it. I'm gonna start laughing because it's so amazingly, it's like what we were talking about. Like it's so insane, but it's saying such incredibly deep things about life. And I just love that book to death.
Oh, that's a great pick. I love that pick. Well, I'm gonna pick another favorite of late, and this is a debut author, so she hasn't had time to be ignored, and she did get a lot of attention. But it's Raven Lalani's Luster. Did you read that yet, Gillian? It came out last year. It's a debut novel.
Right on. Okay.
It's very, I just think it's wonderful. It's not technically at all a crime novel or a thriller, but to me it's structured that way. It has this intensity, and it's beautifully written. It's about this young woman who's working in publishing in New York, and sort of her life is sort of unspooling, and she develops this relationship with this man, and he's married, and things get very complicated, and end up in New Jersey, where they get even weirder, and it's much like like it's impossible to describe the plot, but it's so voicey and intoxicating, and her language, it's sort of crunchy and delicious and jagged, and I just love it so much.
Oh. All right, my second one. Okay, she's not working today. But I'm just gonna say books that people should read. I'm blanking. But I'm gonna say our one of our favorites, Bella Strombo, till the 12th of Never, which is one of my top 3 at least true crime novels ever written. I cannot recommend enough. It's about the Betty Broderick story, and about it really kind of inspired Gone Girl. It's about how 2 people can be really right together at one point, and then all the things that make them right together twist, and they begin destroying each other in ways that they can't quite resist. It's sort of like picking at your nail or chewing on the inside of your mouth, where you should stop it, but you keep going.
Yeah, totally. Up all time, absolutely. Now I'm reminded of for my last one, I'm going to say, because I just saw they reissued her books, but it'd be Charlotte Carter, right? McKenna, they just reissued all her books. These are these wonderful, they originally came out in the 80s, right?
Or late 90s, I think, 96 or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Just a wonderful, evocative crime novels that are just like they're like candy. I just read through them all, and then she contributed a story to an anthology that I edited, and I got to meet her here at a bookstore in New York, and I was so happy to see that they were reissuing them. everybody should get their hands on those, because they should have been central, and somehow I think they got a little lost over the years.
Yeah, her main character is a busker in Harlem, a jazz saxophonist, Nanette Hayes, and they are some of my all-time favorites, that trilogy. I love them so much. So
I want to sing into that world. They're just
writing these down.
Yeah, second one's in Paris. They're great. They're great books. All right, Gillian, I think you're rounding us off with your last pick.
May I jump back in after the next question, because I'm looking mine up.
Sure.
I'll be in just a second, because
we have a lot of other very particular reading recommendation questions. So I'm just going to say we did some reading recommendation question right then. We're going to move past it to something else. So again, submitted on Instagram. Mitchell had a question. Tell us something about working with the editor you have or had in common. And I'm sure they're talking about the great Sally Kim.
Sally edited my very first book, Sharp Objects. And I mean, that's, I guess I'd at least been experienced being edited a lot, because I worked at a magazine for so many years. But so I was knowledgeable kind of about the process, at least. But she is what an editor really should be, which is incredibly smart, lets you have your own voice, will maybe write a question mark if she, guide you, like perhaps this is going on a little bit too long, your love of cheese or whatever weirdness you're doing, or sort of like, but let you think about it. So she would kind of point out things, and some things I would agree with and be like, oh yes, absolutely. I have a habit with repeating a lot of words, and I usually get into something like with squishy, wobbly, like I'm very jello-y adjectives. So she would point out stuff like that, as do all my editors, because I'm doing it. But yeah, she let you have your own voice. So she pushed you, but then if you were like, no, I'm really sure about this, I want this, then it was like, cool, like your book. Like, so it was a great experience working with her. And I have to add, she was the only one who really was into it. I mean, we shopped it all around, and most places we went to said, men don't read books by women, and women don't read books about characters that they don't find aspirational, or that they can hope to see, or that teaches them a lesson at the end, which is dumb. I was like, well, then don't read my stuff. And so she was really, it was like, thank God. So that's my Sally Kim.
I bet those people that said that were really eating their words. I
was like, I think you're wrong, but
as an avid reader, I had the same experience. It's my first book with Sally, but it is just that balance that you dream for, where she just will talk about some of the things she's interested in, and sort of giving you things to think about, and things that aren't taking shape, or what I especially love, because per our previous discussion, when I can go further, and when it's okay, like that, just sort of helping navigate all of that, and being the kind of ideal reader, which is really what you hope for, and not too into the line edit, like early. I got always my agent doesn't allowed to line edit me at all anymore, because we had a long discussion about this. But I don't like that early on to get into the to see stuff on the page.
There's no good comes of that.
No. So she's just wonderful about waiting till because in the end you got to figure it out yourself, or it won't be organic, and that's sort of what you hope for in an editor, and it's a dream. Very grateful to have her and to share this lineage with you. Yeah, that's amazing.
No kidding.
That must have been one of her first books, I think.
I think so. Certainly early on. I've had a different editor for every single book, because I'm an awful human, and they all run screaming from Penguin Random House with the just because of how the industry is. But I've loved all three of them. I felt really lucky. I love people who push me to explain and articulate myself a little bit, but like, why is this scene here? I don't get it. And that helps me as I'm explaining why I need this scene. helps me make it better. Like, it helps me, being forced to do that makes me go back and go like, oh, right, that's what this scene was about, which I really always appreciate.
Yeah.
Not about salt. You can't write about salt. So,
I would be so into the Gillian cut of Gone Girl, the early draft.
there's a lot. It's his whole second book.
The extended version.
I would definitely.
I went way into like their whole Amy's whole family ran like a dating concierge service. The sort of like eHarmony, guaranteed to match their mates, and I was like, that feels too on the nose. I read 100 damn pages on that, like other that background. Just
I'm with Megan. I want to read all of it.
I had like 3 pages in the turnout of Derek, the contractor, eating sushi, and this really like was so savoring the sushi, and no one around him is eating in years, and he's sort of like he's just grabbing from the sushi platter, and that was I had no excuse for that other than that writing about him eating all this sushi. So.
Oh my God, how funny. Okay, another question. Hi, Megan and Gillian, big fan. I love how you both center a kind of femininity that's complicated and savage in your work. Do you think that your books speak to one another in that sense? And this was a question from earlier. I know you've already kind of touched on this, but if you wanted to expound.
I think definitely they do. I mean, I think you could give, as a gift, like a book by myself and a book by Megan, and they would feel like companion pieces in a way. And I just think that they, we both have the same obsessions. We both have the same interest in women and rage and sexuality and the dynamic between women and men and gender. And we just have such similar obsessions and I think kind of background interest from when we were even when we were kids even.
Yeah, it was coming from the same sources and just right around the same age and different parts of the Midwest, and just sort of having parents that were into letting us watch and read weird things.
Yes.
It's all a kind of heady brew. So I like to think of it that way too. I'm always inspired every time I read or watch anything by you. So without question.
Yes.
Here's one very specific to Megan. Was there an aspect of ballet schools that surprised you as you did your research?
Yes, and this shouldn't have. I knew this was a thing. I knew preparing your point shoe was a thing, a very big thing that you have to sort of essentially break down this beautiful shoe that these Italian or French shoemakers make, and it's this vision of beauty. But I knew that you had to break it down, but I didn't know that there were literally 100,000 YouTube videos of ballet dancers doing and their schools and how passionate they are about their approach, whether they would use a hammer or they would never use a hammer, or they crush it in a door, or whether they use alcohol or they use a razor blade, or how, and they all very wedded to it. And I don't even want to tell you how many hours I spent watching this. It was really my YouTube search history is going to reveal me. Well, in many ways, but I was not aware of almost what a religion that was, and I thought it was great. I love that stuff.
I have also wasted many hours, and I think we follow some of the same ballerinas because you posted a video of her hitting the shoe on the stairs the other day, and I had just watched it in my stories, and then I was like, oh, Megan just reshared, like just nailing that shoe on the stairs, like to get it ready. So it doesn't make any sound. That was her point that day. Like,
right.
She was like, I don't like making sound when I run across the stage, and she was just beating that shoe. So
I did have the dancer do a fact check on the book at the end, and then I did have something about scuffing it. She's like, nope. She's her precision as a dancer carried through her precision as a fact checker in the best way, and she said the same thing. Like, if they're really doing it wrong, if you want to have them doing it wrong, you could have it in there,
but be wrong, and you know that now. You'll be shamed by ballerinas internationally. Well, there's so much. Just super quick. There's so much violence toward, the shoes. You have Marie fixing, and you watch her with her claw hammer fixing it, and then later on she sees the box of brand new point shoes, and she said, like lambs to the slaughter, which cracks me up. You have the story of the ballerina catching on fire, which is so vivid. The story of which, and I looked these up, the story of like the buying of the ballerina's shoes and making a delicious, tasty meal of it and eating them. There's so much, like I felt bodily uncomfortable at points, which I know is exactly what you were trying to do. So I would loved it, but don't get me wrong, but you succeeded because I felt like uncomfortable in my space, even reading.
Yeah, me as well. It was a claustrophobic book to write in that way because it was a little bit, I got lit myself on fire. So it was a little bit of energy.
Okay, we probably have time I'm going to try to squeeze in 3 questions here, even though we have some more. So another question from Instagram, which I think is, it's a great question. Eve was wondering, in what way do you feel the genre of crime fiction has changed since your first book? And I guess both of your first books probably came out a similar time, right?
I'm giving this one to Megan because she's 10 in that intermediate time, and I have not. So she's more articulate than I am. So go. Hit it.
I mean, in large part because of Gone Girl. I mean, it was a big factor in it. But before that, it was very hard. I got the same responses that you got, Gillian, when you were first trying. Like, this is too dark and it's not a mystery, because it's not a sort of solving of clue. I mean, there are clues, but
it's procedural. It's not
and and this is there's I don't know that this is weird, it's sort of and I felt like everyone I knew who was a woman who read crime liked weird, dark stuff. That's why we read so much true crime, where all that energy could reside. And it's not that there weren't great female crime writers before. There were, but somehow they were being siloed in certain ways, or somehow people would forget about them when you wanted them to buy your book. And but I do think that made it okay. And since then, like, it sort of let leash the hounds, it feels like Gone Girl did, and then everything sort of came forth. And I think now we're just seeing it diversify in every way, across ethnicity and gender, and it just feels like it's just getting so much class. It feels like it's just becoming much more diverse, which it's needed to do for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, for both of you, what are your favorite and least favorite parts of your writing process? Why don't we start with you, Gillian, since Megan just spoke?
Oh, man. Well, also, I'm going to throw out Megan, Sarah Gran. Sarah Gran.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is right around the same time. It was all around
that's what made me think, because I remember when I was touring, I wanted to meet you because everyone was sharp object. Every bookstore I went to, someone would hand me a Queen pen and was like, I think you really like this. So I have 18 copies of Queen pen in my house, but which is great. My favorite part is that adrenaline rush you get when you have figured out what the first third of your book is, at least. I mean, I tend to almost kind of write in thirds for some reason. And you're just going, and you're so excited and everything. And then I think my least favorite part is just that writing's a grind, and I tell that to everyone. And just like every other job, it is like I feel so lucky to be a writer, but there are just weeks and months where you're just like, you got to sit down and write, and it's probably going to be awful, and I'm going to throw it away, and I'm going to have like this whole week of work is just going to disappear. But I need to remember that's probably somehow my brain is getting me to the next stop. But when you're in it, it's awful.
And that's my least favorite part too. The part you can't get it to take life in any way, and you can keep writing pages, but there's something missing, and you can't make it happen. And you have to, and I think, at least it gets a little easier the more you sort of know that, and I gotta take a walk, I gotta do other things, I gotta see a movie. It's not gonna help to sit here all day. And feel bad about myself. But my favorite part is when, which sort of connects to yours too, but it's when I surprise myself. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen. And that's the best feeling. It's like, where did this come from? That's the
yes. You did what? Character that I've made up.
Exactly.
Okay, we are essentially out of time. I'm going to try to rapid fire a couple questions really quickly. Megan, would you ever write a YA book?
Yes, for sure.
Excellent. Okay, what is a recent read that you have enjoyed? One book read recently, or we also have someone who wants to know quarantine reads. So take that however you want. One book to shout out.
I will have my recent read is Sean Cosby's sequel to Blacktop Wasteland, which I just finished, courtesy of Murder by the Book, and I loved it. I just think he's incredible.
Yes, Razorblade Tears is also incredible. His brand new one. He's really like such a new star of the crime fiction world. It's so nice to see. How about you, Gillian?
I'm gonna go Animal Lisa today. I was so impressed with, she did 3 Women, which was amazing nonfiction, and then she pivoted so stunningly to fiction. It was mind-boggling. So I just love a book that you can just suck on. Like it's so like everything about it is so it's juicy and wobbly and all my favorite words.
I'll get the sushi tray out.
and of course, I mean, I didn't
recommend. Notice I don't have my own book, but I do have evidence of it.
More importantly, we're here to actually promote that book. That's barely in print.
All right. Well, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say once again that this is available. It's brand new. It's stunning, as all of Megan's books are. And we have signed copies. There's a link in the comments on both Facebook and YouTube if you want to order a signed copy. This has been the highlight of my month. It's been lovely to hear the two of you chatting. It was the best kind of conversation where we just get to sit back and it sounds like we're eavesdropping on Friends. So thank you both for being here. Gillian,
we should come back. We should come back next year when Megan's publishing her 11th book and I'm still in the first draft of this one. And we can check in and see how we're all doing. My hair is gonna be like this. Help me. I'm gonna help me.
I'm in.
Scenes. If you want to just roll out those extra Gone Girl scenes, I'll take them.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for having us. We love you as always. So appreciative of your bookstore. So thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully see you both soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Megan.